things up just a little bit, I want to introduce Nick Lewis, who is the Executive Director of Glen Helen here. I want to thank him very much for hosting us tonight in the Hyde, but I want to give him a few minutes to say a few things about Glen Helen. Unfortunately, he's got to run to a board meeting, so we're going to get him on first and get on to other important duties.
I was advised to keep the microphone. Hi everybody. Welcome to Glen Helen. Welcome to Camp Greene. Isn't this a beautiful place? As you already heard, I wish I could be here for the entire evening, but board meeting calls. We are on the site of a former Girl Scout camp that we acquired from the Girl Scouts of Western Ohio back in 2014. This was part of a strategy of the Glen Helen Association. This was the first property that we've acquired outside of Glen Helen. And since then, we've added several more to the preserve. But it was basically that idea of when vulnerable properties came up that were on our border, we wanted to make sure that they had a conservation buyer, whether it was us or whether it was somebody else, that properties that were in the watershed. And this one, you got to go on a tour, you know, it's right on the edge of the Little Miami River, borders Glen Helen, borders John Bryant State Park, and by preserving this property, we've maintained the environmental health of the river, the scenic view shed of the Glen, and we get to have wonderful programs like this in this spectacularly beautiful building. As it often goes, acquiring this property was a collaborative effort. Funding for it came from the Ohio Conservation Fund, also from the Upper River Fund of the Dayton Foundation. On the walk today, folks were mentioning Glenn Thompson, who was the funder of that fund, and the conservation easement for this property is held by the Wisconsin Land Trust, who were also instrumental in helping us figure out how to acquire property for the first time. Glen Helen now encompasses 1,137 acres. We use this land to offer life-shaping environmental learning for children, for families. About 125,000 people a year visit Glen Helen to participate in programs, to walk the preserve, and otherwise, seek inspiration in nature. I should say, Glen Helen has had a wild ride over the last 3 years. And I say that with a degree of humbleness, recognizing we all survived a global pandemic. But during the pandemic, the preserve was closed to the public. All of our staff were laid off. And the future of the preserve as a natural area, as a place of environmental learning, was very much in doubt. Fortunately, our friends organization, the Glen Helen Association, was able to reach an agreement to purchase the entire property from Antioch College. We concluded that in 2020. We opened it to the public. We launched a $4.25 million capital campaign to actually raise the money to pay for it, because we didn't have that in our back pocket, to restart our programs, to attend to basic things like public safety and code compliance. I'm delighted to tell you that we are basically now at the end, the successful end of that capital campaign, and you can see the work that the generosity of donors around the region has allowed us to accomplish anywhere you look in the preserve. We are working on bridges and boardwalks throughout the preserve. We tore down the old Antioch College power plant, which was located inexplicably on a spring-fed wetland within the preserve. We've restarted our outdoor school programs, our summer eco camps, our naturalist training internships. We are about to embark on a significant project to make the trails of the Glen more accessible to people with limited mobility, and stick with us while we do that work over the next couple of years. I'm so delighted that you're here with us today, and I'm so sorry that I'm going to be walking out the door as soon as I step away from the microphone. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being here.
Fowler. I am with Fiber Metro Parks. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Partners for the Environment. And I want to introduce the rest of the steering committee, which makes a lot of the effort and all of this happen on an annual basis. So I'm going to introduce Sarah Hippensteel Hall, my co-chair. With the Dayton Foundation. With Council Land Trust. There you go. Steve Carney, retired City of Dayton. Bob Downs with Interface Forum of Greater Dayton. Matt Lindsay with MVRPC. Deb Oxman with Bruckner Nature Center. So just a couple of other big thank yous. First of all, if you don't know, we've partnered with Sochi for the last couple of years to help work on building grant opportunities and building relationships with the higher education organizations. Patty Bettelmeyer and Cassie Barlow are big very instrumental in helping us keeping this group moving forward and building that relationship. So really a big thank you to them. They couldn't be here this evening. I also want to thank very much Karen Current. Where's Karen at?
Andrew's here.
Andrew's here, all right. I want to thank the Current Cuisine for the amazing food. And most importantly, just really want to thank our sponsors tonight that really make this organization happen, and especially this evening happening. So our platinum sponsors this year are the Dayton Foundation, Xylem, and the Greater Dayton Conservation Fund for our platinum sponsors. Our gold sponsors this year are the Three Valley Conservation Trust, the University of Dayton Hanley Sustainability Institute, and Allwood Audubon. And our silver sponsors this year are Miami Conservancy District, MVRPC, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, Bruckner Nature Center, Five Rivers Metro Parks, Boone Shop Museum of Discovery, and Tecumseh Land Trust. So I'd like to move on forward to our next piece. I'd like to introduce Ray Blattner, who is another great partner organization with the Greater Dayton Conservation Fund.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you very much to everyone at the Partners for the Environment for putting together this wonderful thing. So you guys was involved in that as well. So thank you all, and I want to congratulate not only the nominees and certainly the award winners, but also everybody who's here, because you're here because you care about the right things, and without everyone in this room, the good things that Partners for the Environment and others do would go wanting. So I'm the co-chair. My fellow co-chair, Meg Maloney, is here. Just a little bit about the Greater Dayton Conservation Fund. It was created in 2006 by a group of dedicated conservationists, environmentalists who really care about the ecology in this area. And if I can remember all the founding fathers and mothers, it was Marv Linsky, Herb Beezer, Dean Woodhull, Robert Siebenthaler, William Gillespie, Mike Parks of the Dayton Foundation, through which his auspices we came to be, and Dusty Hall, who is here tonight. Dusty. And Ms. Bob Burke is also on the founding, so congrats to them. Thanks for them, what they continue to do. So what do? We look for opportunities to provide funding to the of seed money. I think programs are typically in the $5,000 to $10,000. And we look for organizations, initiatives, projects that will support the stated purpose of the Conservation Fund, which is to maintain and enhance the treasure that is our natural environment in this area. We will have our grant applications for 2024 available early January, whatever the first working day in January is. And the deadline for submitting an application is March 31. So if you're interested, contact the Foundation for the application, or talk to Meg, me, or any other member of the Conservation Fund. So thank you very much, and we're delighted to sponsor, and it's a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Good evening. So happy to see all of you. Isn't this space amazing? Yes. We were really excited to be able to show it to you. So many of you said that you had never heard of it or never been here before, and that probably was very true if you weren't a Girl Scout in the 80s or 90s or 50s or 60s. Although at least 2 people told me that not only had they been here before, but they slept in this building. So I know that the Jurks said that they both had accompanied Girl Scout troops here and stayed overnight. Bob said he slept upstairs, and so it's special to be in a place that has inspired so many Girl Scouts. I certainly would not have chosen the School of Natural Resources at Ohio State if I had not had all that good Girl Scout experience. So really happy that the Glen saved this place from some other fate and is able to keep it natural. And those of you who went on the tour or the short hike heard how special some of the plants are that are out there that have been preserved because it's been green space for so long. So thank you all for coming out to this event tonight. I know it's a little bit off our normal beaten path, but we're all about showcasing what our partners are doing, and this is, such a triumph for them. I am going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the past year. That's usually what I do when I come up here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do over the next year. And so, we are all partners together. I'm so thrilled that Dr. Wilson is here to talk about how we are able to communicate some of these difficult conversations to the rest of our constituents, our stakeholders. But we're all out there fighting every day for our important part of the environment, whether it's wildlife or it's forestry or, for me, of course, water restoration. But we're all, think of it as all individual trees in the forest. But when we come together, we're so much stronger as the forest. So that's what the Partners is all about. That's what we've always been meant to do, is to take all of these individual organizations and all of this hard work that you're doing and channel it into a greater strength that we can harness as a team. So that's what the Partners for the Environment is all about. We have been around for over 10 years now. We were first created by the Dayton Foundation in a partnership with Five Rivers Mentor Park and the Miami Conservancy District because we, 3 organizations, saw that we could be stronger together than we would be individually. And could we find opportunities to reduce duplication of effort, to work together to accomplish some of our goals more efficiently, to attract regional funding that wouldn't be available to any one of our organizations individually, but could be regionally. And so that's what we've been doing all these years, and we've taken many different tactics to do that. Over the last 3 years, we put all our eggs in the Sochi basket, so to speak. Prior to that, we had always had a full-time or a part-time staff person that we oversaw. So she helped become our fiscal administrator for those 3 years. They helped us put together 6 very large, complicated grant applications for funding opportunities that were available. Okay, we didn't get any of them, but you know is grant writing, and so we did the best we could to try to bring those opportunities to us. The last one that we applied for is, we've been told actually we might be on a waiting list for Mosaic, and they had thousands of applicants. So, we're competing in a very large pool. So we're still hopeful that we can do that kind of work together. As we move away from Sochi as our fiscal agent, we are going to go back to a funding or an administrative model where we hire a part-time staff person that has worked well for us in the past. That person will help us schedule and manage trainings and workshops and joint events, potentially more grant applications. We are talking about potentially launching another cohort of the Greater Dayton Environmental Leader Development Program, but we need a part-time staff person to do that. So we will be making an announcement and recruiting. If you know of anyone that would like to pick up a few hours, we definitely will guide them along the way, and we just need somebody that's enthusiastic about helping this organization thrive. So, for the last year, we went back and worked with one of our national expert partners, the Institute for Conservation Leadership. They help organizations all over the country become healthier and more successful. And so they help with board development, and they help you train to be better fundraisers, and they help you partner or develop networks or coalitions more effectively. And over the years, they've supplied some of our trainings, if you'll remember, or they've brought people into, during COVID, we pivoted, we were active. We had Joy Jackson do a series of online Zoom trainings. So they've really been a great partner. We turned to them and said, okay, we need help re-energizing our members. We need help fostering more involvement and a greater level of collaboration amongst our individual organizations to make more of a significant impact. So that was our ask. And so they worked with us for about 6 months to propose steps that we could take to make our organization stronger. And one of those things was to hold more events, actually. And so many of you came to our event at Allwood, and we had another event at Cox Arboretum, and very successful. And so we've been just trying out new things and seeing what our members need and want from us. And so to that end, on the very back of your program is a QR code to a little survey that will help us understand what you want. Now wait, the last question on the survey got glitched up when we launched it. So we'll send you a new link. Otherwise, you'll get to that last question and be like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to say here. So feel free to do it now, but we're just going to make you do it again later. Because this organization is a partnership, and we're here to develop and build programs that benefit you. So the survey is to help us all work together better. There's also a survey on there, the second to last page. Please do take that survey tonight. Don't wait. That's about this event and always making it better. I'm thrilled to see so many faces that I've never seen before. We love attracting new people, and so thank you so much if you've never been to this event before. We're thrilled to have you, and we hope you come back again and again. I know Leanne's here. I would be remiss if I didn't say this party was always her idea. There she is. She said, environmentalists, natural resources, it's really hard work. It can be really disheartening. There are wins, but there are also just a lot of hard work, and sometimes, like with those 6 grant applications, there's some not wins. So Leanne said to us, we need some time to just be able to celebrate the successes, be able to celebrate the people who are inspiring us. And so that is, it was always your idea. And so we've been doing that for 10 years, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger every year. And so we're thrilled to have you here. Really excited to hear from our award winners. They are a super inspiring group of people who have been influencing their communities and really making a difference. And so we're going to celebrate them in a minute. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Did I forget anything here? This is amazing for us. I don't know what to do. You can dance. Is it a challenge? So I would just say that I've heard Dr. Wilson speak before, and Kate, were we together? You spoke to the Ohio watershed leaders, or maybe it was Ohio Leader Development, anyway. And it changed. I do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot. And it changed everything I do about how I present myself and my topic to the people that I'm speaking to. It was a real pivot for me. So I think you're really going to get a lot out of what he says, and we're thrilled to have you here tonight, and I would introduce Dr. Aaron Wilson. I knew there was something.
So, in the last few hours, I got several texts saying, I heard you on YSO this evening. I don't know, I was here, I didn't hear it, so I don't know what that meant. I don't know how they interviewed me almost 4 weeks ago. You may have heard that the region in the past month has received a 4-year, $1 million planning grant from the US EPA to do climate action planning for the Dayton metropolitan area. Which I had not heard, and so I won't endorse that I heard it, is all about that, and so I'm hoping that it came across well. As someone who's going to get well involved with that project over the course of the next 4 years, I'm very much looking forward to Dr. Wilson's talk about how to do climate communication. But let me introduce him. Our featured speaker this evening is an assistant professor and weather and climate field specialist with the Department of Extension in the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences at Ohio State University. He's also the state climatologist and principal research scientist at the Bird, Polar, and Climate Research Center, also at OSU. His research and presentations focus on the observed changes in temperature and precipitation over geologic to recent timescales, and also from a global overview to local changes here in Ohio. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Aaron Wilson.
Move the microphone off a little bit. So thank you so much for those great words of introduction, and to hear that I had an impact on someone's life you can't get better feedback than that. So being able to think about engaging and how we engage, and I take that really seriously. And so what I wanted to do today is sort of give a little bit of a feel and a flavor of my presentation, or at least how I set out to do it, and then maybe at the end kind of provide maybe a schematic overview of the things that I'm thinking about when I want to talk about climate change. And certainly, depending on different communities, it can be a topic that's a little bit hotly contested at times. But that's, again, just kind of forces us to think about how we overcome the barriers, right? To remember that climate change is a human story, and the more we can talk about that, the human story, the personal story, you'll hear that today, how personal it is. I think it goes a long way into making impact when you're discussing these things. So we're transitioning our seasons. How about this beautiful weather this week, right? Kudos to the meteorologists out there. Fantastic forecast this week. But anyway, we experience weather with our senses. We automatically think about certain events, weather-related in our lives, and it can take us back to how we felt or what we were thinking or what we were doing. I might bring up December 23rd last year. Where were you? Right? We dropped 50 degrees in 12 hours, and it was quite a cold day, although it was a very warm winter. We'll kind of get to that in a second. As meteorologists, we take a lot of data, right? So, and we put it on a weather map, and contrary to popular belief, we do a pretty good job of forecasting. We have instruments and a lot of measurements. We've been measuring temperature for a very long time. But as scientists, right, figures like this graph that you see here, they don't tell a story per se. They do to me. You know, that's what I'm trained to look for. And we're all trained to look at the data that we're used to. But what's really important is we've got to take that information and we have to make it useful and usable to our communities. All of our communities. It doesn't matter if we're teachers, architects, it really matters how we translate that information. And I think that's really the key to engaging on the topic of weather and climate. It always strikes me funny, weather is something that pulls us all together, right? We romanticize about it. We rally in our communities when an event comes through, like a tornado or a hurricane or a flood. But the flip side, or similar, you know, when we think about climate, it's something that often can drive us apart. And I've always thought about that in terms of thinking about the differences here between weather and climate. So let's do something awesome and look at our awesome Earth here from a broader view. And so this is a simulation and satellite images brought together to depict basically weather patterns over a particular period on the Earth here. So the orange is dust coming off the African continent. The blue that you see, these are sea salt particles. So all of these are aerosols, tiny droplets, liquid or solid particles. We've got volcanic emissions in white, and you'll eventually see some green on here, and that's carbon coming from fires around the world, right? So let's imagine yesterday, right? I got up, it was 42 degrees in London, Ohio, when it was. By the afternoon, we were close to 70. Last night we dropped back down to 55, right? And that's pretty common. We see 20, 30, 40 degree temperature changes in a day. That's the chaotic nature of weather, the ups and downs. And we live on that scale. That's how we operate, right? Our lives are kind of on that time scale of weather happening. It's always happening constantly around us. But animations like this help us to kind of pull back and do a couple of things. One, get us out of our place in Ohio. Look at other places of the world. And two, it shows that all of these really rapid changes in the weather are part of a larger pattern. And a pattern that, by the way, connects us to every other point on the world. Right? We are not distant from Antarctica. Right? What happens in Antarctica impacts what happens in other places in the world. What happens in the Arctic impacts us here. And what we do and the weather that occurs here in Ohio impacts others across the entire globe. And I think it's really important to have an opportunity like this just to pull back and one, admire this great Earth and the weather patterns. I'm a little biased, right? But just, you know, just to admire those conditions, but to know how connected we really are. We know how connected we are to Canada this year and wildfires. Right? So we had a tremendous amount of wildfire smoke. This is a satellite image from July. The bright white are clouds, but that hazy beigeish color, that was wildfire smoke brought directly down. Brought us a beautiful summer. Northerly flow, cooler than average temperatures this summer. Also brought the wildfire smoke. I like this animation as well. It's just so captivating to watch these things. Huge systems spinning over southern Michigan. We've got clouds that actually gave us a lower amount of wildfire smoke this particular day, but it rushed right back in. You can see all the smoke tapping around the backside of this system, right? So weather is amazing, right? It's absolutely amazing in what it does. So what happened in Canada did not stay in Canada. The wildfire smoke did not stay. This is the daily air quality index values for PM 2.5. 2.5 referring to the size of molecules here. This is from Montgomery County site close by. The range, the 20-year high and low is given, if you can see it in the light blue range. The 5-year average is the dark line. And the dark blue, that's the air quality values PM 2.5 this year. So not only was it unhealthy for sensitive groups, but it was unhealthy for all of us, right? And because those fires were close and it brought that, you know, the northerly wind flow brought us down, we had unhealthy air quality here right in Ohio. And impacted by that, very much impacted by that. Again, we're connected to other areas of the world. So again, part of what I want to do tonight is kind of at least do some of the information that I generally provide with weather and climate, but then get it more of the communication of those facts as well. And so I've slimmed this down, and if anybody asks me how long do you want to speak, and I'm like 2 minutes or 2 hours, you take your pick, right? We can do it all. So we're going to do 30 minutes today. But if we look at Ohio, let's just put us in the weather and think about this year so far, through September 12th at least. It has been a warmer than average year for Ohio. Okay? If you look around this region where we are right now, it's close to average. A little bit farther west, close to Montgomery County, it's a little bit above average. But generally for the state, it's been above average. We've also been a bit drier than average. There's pockets of wetter than average down here in southwest Ohio, much wetter across north central Ohio, largely due to some mega rain events in August. But this is actually the 9th warmest year on record going back to 1895. So 129-year record. It's the 39th wettest, right? But if you ask folks down, even in Dayton, is it a wet year? So even a state statistic doesn't necessarily capture what you experience where you live. And it's really important to delineate these. So let's zoom in on Dayton. I picked on Dayton a little bit here. We're going to do it both for precipitation, temperature, and then eventually precipitation. This is what it actually looked like for Dayton International Airport. So the gray bars, the range, the high, the low. Record highs are for the day are in red, record lows in blue. Green is the typical 30-year average. So when you start to look at the chaotic nature and the variability, you can see we generally had no winter cold last year. Right? We'll get to that statistic in a minute. By the way, Dayton hit 70 degrees for the first time in the month of February. 3 times. Right? That beat the old record of 2, 3 times. In some areas, we're pushing well above that. Right? We did have some near record or cooler spring conditions at times, and some near record warmth in spring as well. Right? And you'll see what the season looks like when you do that, right? Hot month, cold month, divide by 2, you get an average. That's how statistics work. When we get into summer, it's been a mild summer. It's been cooler than average in the state, right? So that's what we've actually experienced. And that's really important, I think, when we talk about the weather and climate. This is what our seasons look like. This was winter, so red means hot, okay? 6 to 7 degrees above average for winter. Second warmest winter on record for Ohio going back to 1895. The only warmer winter was 1931 and 32, okay? Here's our average spring, right? We draw a line through the middle. And then here's basically our cooler than average summer, about 1 to 2 degrees. Okay? Cooler summer, hottest August on record for the entire world. Going back to 1850, 174-year record. August was the warmest August. June through August was the warmest summer for the globe. Not for us, but for the globe. It was the warmest summer on record. So far, for this year, January through August, we are on pace as the second warmest year on record over 174 years. So these are facts, right? Scientific facts. This is how we measure. These are the statistics that are taking place. But we obviously want to go eventually beyond that, right? Let's look at the precipitation side. Now, how many days a year do we see at least a trace of precipitation in southwest Ohio? More or fewer than 150 days? More. About 180, 190. Some years we see 200 days of at least a trace of rainfall. So here in Dayton, in a dry year, right, 28.74 inches of rain through a couple of days ago. Almost 40% of that's fallen in just 7 days. 7 days. So a big portion of our rainfall falls in a few days, and that statistic is changing. That's a big impact right here in the Montgomery Valley. This is what the seasons look like. I use the word whiplash, right? Weather whiplash. We see a lot of weather whiplash here. Depending on your area, now this area has been close to average and slightly drier, right? But Northwest Ohio, very wet winter, very dry spring, a dry summer. And so what we've seen in some of our conditions with the precip is a lot of oscillating back and forth very rapidly. And that's what we see here in Ohio. So let's take a step back again and think about climate. We're transitioning from weather to climate. And I always love using this video. How many dog lovers? So you're out walking your dog. You know that dog's driven by its own internal variability, its own chaotic nature, right? Fire hydrants, McDonald's wrappers, dogs on the other side of the street, cat, squirrel, whatever. That dog could be moving the opposite direction that the dog walker's moving, but we still expect them both to be in roughly the same locations in a couple of minutes. What do we base that decision, that information on? Path that the dog walkers take. So statistically, the mean path of the dog can be described by the dog walker. Right? So what we do is we think of weather like the dog. Chaotic, back and forth. You're the dog walker. Right? And you're related, I mean, you're moving in a similar direction, but you could be moving in the opposite direction at any given moment. Now remember, 2 degree, second warmest winter on record, December 23rd, right? Okay. So that's how they're related to each other. I think it's a really powerful illustration of these two. So from a climate walker perspective, what does it look like? Well, 2022 is the 6th warmest, so let's do a whole year, 6th warmest year on record. Raise your hand if you were born after February of 1985. So you've never experienced a cooler than average month for the planet? Never, your whole life. 30 years. Been warmer than average. Okay? Top 10 warmest years have all occurred since 2010, and you can bet we'll be the top 3rd warmest this year. Somewhere in the top 3. Okay? The last decade is also warmer according to a lot of records. Now, when we go back before temperature records, we rely on ice core proxies and sediment proxies. But to the best of our knowledge, the last decade is the warmest decade than any other multi-century period in the last 125,000 years. Right? But not all regions have warmed equally. And that's really what this map over here on the right is showing. This accelerated warming. Right? Accelerated warming. Why should we care? This is part of describing why should we care about this issue? Well, 38 years old, we've never experienced a colder than average month for the planet. Things are accelerating. It feels like we're on a really fast pace toward big changes. Maybe not so great changes. So we've got to do something, right? We can look at, again, another graph that just shows the dog walking back and forth. This is the United States temperature, average temperature every year since 1895. And what you'll notice, the 1930s, still a very warm decade for the United States. Dust Bowl era, 34, 36, still hold our summer daytime record highs. The 60s and 70s, yeah, you guys had a lot of snow, rub it in, right? You had the blizzard of 78. Everybody talks about. By the way, I've had 3 bigger snowstorms than 1978, but didn't have the wind. I wish I could have been there. But I was born in the other blizzard of the late 70s, 1 year later. I call it the other blizzard of 1970s. But we've been warming ever since, and even our coolest years, you can see here at the end of the graph, are warmer than most of the years of the 20th century. So there's no doubt that we're warming here across the United States. And if we take a difference between just over the last 40 years, the last 2 normal periods that the National Weather Service has used, so it's 1991 to 2020 minus the previous 30 years, this is what the temperature change has happened across the United States. So we're warmer here in Ohio, but not everywhere is warmer. The upper Great Plains have actually cooled over the last 40 years in terms of their annual mean temperature. Interesting, right? It's not exactly linear. We can show the same thing for precip, but I'll just jump to the seasonal precipitation because I think that's something that matters here in the Miami Valley. Changing seasonal distribution of rainfall. Winters are getting wetter. More rainfall, less rainfall during these seasons. Aprils and springs are getting wetter. So we're seeing more spring rainfall and heavier rainfall as well. Our summers are getting drier. Right? And then our falls are going back toward wetter conditions. So I talk a lot and engage a lot with the farming community in Ohio. It's a perfect season, right? A really wet spring, a really dry summer, a really wet fall. It's perfect for production, right? Exactly, right? But what does it also do to other things, like our stream flows? Maybe even our summer and fall stream flows. What impacts does that have on our cold water and our cold fish species and the ecology and tree trees, all these things that you can see the impacts from these changes in climate. And again, if I had 2 hours, I would like to look at all of it. The intensity of the rainfall is increasing as well, right? So what we know is the last 20 years, anytime you hear 1 100-year flood event, 1 1,000-year flood event, that's all based on data that does not include the last 20, 25 years of data. First Street Foundation included that data, and they've got their own methods for doing that, and then looked at, well, what does that look like? How do we change a 1 100-year flood event across the United States? And you see a lot of blue here in the eastern United States, especially in the mid-Atlantic, especially around Louisville, because they increased their average precipitation by about 12 inches since 1970. Right, so a tremendous amount of water and heavier rainfall events. Let's zoom in on Ohio, and what do we see in this area? A 1 100-year flooding event is now occurring every 10 to 20 years. Right, so intense rainfall, that's the name of the game here in Ohio. Warmer temperatures, but intensity of the rainfall, increasing rainfall events. And that increases, the impacts on our natural environment. It increases our flooding. These are examples from Columbus, but I can pull up flooding here, I-70 Huber Heights, all of our infrastructure that we're playing catch up in our infrastructure. Even in our rural areas, right, we're playing catch up. We're seeing these increases in the intensity of the rainfall events. But we're also dealing with a lot more whiplash. Droughts and flash, what we call flash droughts. This is an excellent year as an example of that. We had a fairly dry late April and May. But in mid-May, we had 0% of the state covered in drought conditions. By June 13th, we had 78% of the state in drought conditions. And a month later, we were back down under 5%. So it's the flashiness of the drought, and that's increasing and changing as well. So again, these are just some of the overall kind of impacts that we're seeing right here in Ohio. So it's much more than about temperature, right? And it's much more than just a single impact, but it's really changing our hydrologic cycle, the water cycle on Earth is changing. We're increasing the water vapor with warmer temperatures. The evaporation rate increases. You get more water vapor in the atmosphere. Fronts come along, and what do fronts do? They do what fronts do. They squeeze out moisture from the atmosphere. Hurricanes squeeze out that atmospheric moisture. So you see 65 inches of rain in 4 days along Port Arthur, right, with Hurricane Harvey, or 40 inches in Florence, or 5.5 inches of rain in Victor City, in Miami Valley, right, 2 hours, 5.5 inches of rain. How do we cope? How do we deal with that? So weather extremes, and you hear a lot about weather extremes, are really just the manifestations of a changing climate. What is weather trying to do? What the effects of weather are all about redistributing heat from the equator to the poles. That's what weather is. That's what physically it's trying to do. So as we intensify moisture, intensify heat, we get more energy in the system. We get more billion-dollar weather disasters. And that we've seen that a big rise. We're at 23 this year, more than any year we've seen certainly since 1980. The mean since 1980 is 8 per year, but a lot of our recent years are in the different colors that you see on the graph. But they're going to look different depending on where you live. If you look at these disasters, we don't see a lot of hurricane disasters here. Ike was an exception, right? We don't typically see a lot of the wildfire impacts here. We have some, but that's the West. That's what it looks like in the West. Sea level inundation, that's what the Maldives have to deal with. That's what the East Coast of the United States is dealing with. This is what our communities in Florida are dealing with. We're dealing with the heavy rainfall and heavy precipitation events, but that's what's really changing. So it's important, I think, to talk about what is your face of climate change. What is our face of climate change? Right? And that's going to be based on our geographic location, but also the communities that we're working with. So we can talk about futures and future projections, right? We can say a number like 3 to 5 degrees warmer by 2050, 4 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit warmer by 2100. But what does that actually mean, right? The impact of what that means. We do expect warmer winters and warmer springs, wetter winters and springs, but drier summers. But finding ways that we can encapsulate those changes. To think about Ohio's moving toward a mid-Atlantic winter and an Arkansas summer. Anybody been to Arkansas? Anybody from Arkansas? Right? I kind of talked today, and they used the word abysmal. is it really that bad? But it's warmer than average. Precip, a lot in spring, a lot in fall, less so, it's a little dry in the summer. But this will have an impact, right? Because, you think about native species. They're also not just native to the soil and native to the plant, they're native to the climate of a particular region. So thinking about the trends, this is, I think, a way to getting us thinking about how we're moving. So that's, I think another effective way that we do this. Of course, all of this is about assessing risk. And, we can think about the temperature impacts, we can think about precipitation impacts. I think the top 2 bullets here are what we're dealing with in the Miami Valley. Temperature increases mean higher demand for water and energy. That's increasing. But increased risk of damage to energy and water infrastructure is opposing that increase in demand. So both of those things are working together to increase that risk. But I think management of these rapid oscillations is something that we consider. Obviously, we want to talk a lot about, water quality impacts. I kind of quipped earlier, over the last several years, you would think all of our water goes to Lake Erie. Right? It doesn't. Right? A lot does not go to Lake Erie. We've got inland water bodies and rivers and things going to the Ohio River and down the Mississippi and the Gulf. So thinking about these impacts, again, what happens here doesn't stay here. What we're doing impacts our communities all along our rivers and downstream. So it's important to kind of think about assessing that risk. Again, we could stop there, probably go into the next 45, 50 minutes of how, those different types of risks. But I would encourage you, when you're talking to your communities, identify those risks that are important to the communities that you're working with. And really kind of prioritize, hey, if I have to prioritize the assets or things that I want to preserve, work to do that and make those things. Because then the next step needs to be, what can you do? What can I do? What can we do? And I think this is a great illustration of that. Psychologist Elise Mel, from different spheres of influence and thinking about how we can impact, our behavior in terms of what we're doing and learning from life. So, as private, you've got your individual person and, of course, private, personal, learning, educating, understanding the system. Obviously, our pocketbooks, the books, and motor booths, and all of these different techniques that we can do. Our social network, sharing goods, teaching others in our expertise, right? I consider myself, a knowledgeable in climate, but I can't be an architect. I can't be somebody that works with infrastructure and engineer, but working with your expertise and sharing your expertise in this realm, I think, is really important. Getting into organizational, thinking about sharing ideas among these collaborating partners, right? Change processes and procedures. Into the public, maybe taking these up and running for office on these platforms, or creating laws, voting, or even culture. We know that we can do a lot at the grassroots level, but we know some of this, probably we're asking for transformational change when it comes to adaptation and certainly mitigating for climate change. So I think it's important to think about these different realms and these spheres of influence. What are our options? Well, we can mitigate, right? Stop or limit climate change impacts, reduce greenhouse gases and capturing them from the atmosphere. We can adapt, right? So we're changing the infrastructure, planning, and behaviors, or ultimately we suffer. And what do we know about who suffers? It's not those with resources, nor the ones that have contributed largest to the problem. It's those that are more vulnerable and have fewer resources to adapt and to mitigate, right? So I think that that's really important to remember. Lean on, explore again about that education, lean on a lot of tools that are available. The U.S. Resilience Toolkit is a great learning tool with a lot of case studies of communities and organizations and nonprofits all over the country that have taken these steps to build resilience within their communities, right? And again, it's back to understanding what my local changes are. How am I being impacted by these changes? How can I assess the vulnerability and then prioritize my actions? Really key to do that. If you want to get into the scientific nitty-gritty, the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, right? So there's a link provided there, and I certainly will make all the slides available. you know, from the physical change to how we adapt and how communities are adapting, and even into how do we mitigate. So I've had the pleasure over the last 3 years of being the lead author of the Midwest chapter of the upcoming National Climate Assessment that'll be out later this year. And a lot of what we wanted to do is not only talk about the risk of the changes in the Midwest, but what are communities or examples of things that are happening in our region already that are quote unquote climate smart or building climate resilience. And so how can we do that, I think is really important to think about. I think it's good to look, have you heard of the 6 Americas study, right? Changing attitudes of global warming, 6 Americas here. From a scale of dismissive all the way to alarm. And what we know, this is as of April of 2020, but you can get the most up-to-date at the link, and again, looking at this poll, it's a long study here looking at attitudes on climate change. We've shifted a lot of disengaged out from dismissive toward cautious, concerned, and alarmed. Right? Contrary to maybe what we hear, and maybe I'll share that in a second, but there's a lot of like-mindedness in our communities. There's a lot of like-mindedness in our communities, and so don't be afraid to talk about it and reach out. I think that's really important. So again, we've seen that shift. So less alarmed, fewer up, I should say, of alarmed, but less of that dismissive, doubtful, and disengaged. You can pull data from your own counties and communities here. Estimated percent of adults who think global warming will harm future generations. Right here in the counties that we're in, it's about 60 to 65%. It's a big majority of your fellow citizens in the community that, guess what, think global warming is harming our children and our future generations. Percentage of adults who support funding research into renewable energy sources. 86% for the state, and you can see this area is up over close to 90% of thinking about renewable resources, the mitigation topic. Estimated percent of adults who discuss global warming at least occasionally, 35%, right? So we're not talking about it enough. We're not talking about it enough. And I think it really boils down in these 12 words, which are really great, again, from this Center for Climate Change Communication. It's real, it's us, experts agree, it's bad. Here's the more important. Others care, and there is hope. That hope is in building that resilience. And again, realizing that you have a lot of like-mindedness in the community, you just got to start talking about it. And I think once you start talking about it, it's a catalyst for other groups and other organizations to start talking about it as well, pulling in those resources that's well demonstrated here tonight. So kind of the framing, it's all about framing. How an issue is framed tells us what kind of issue it is. That influences how much or how little we care about the issue. So it's funny, I always think about these 3 terms, pathos, logos, ethos, right? Pathos appeals to the emotions. It's a story, and we're all involved, and it's all of us. So develop a story around those questions. Why do I care? And you share why you care with others. That then helps, kind of communicate why should the audience listen to what you have to say. Appeal to reason and facts and figures, right? Present the science logically and articulate it in a manner that resonates. It's not just numbers, but it's why those numbers matter. Reach out to local experts, right? Reach out to state climatologists or resources. We love to share. I love to share and engage, right? But also appeals to a greater good, right? Based on source credibility. What do we care about? Right? What do we do about this? Solution space. I heard the term solutionists. Our kids are like solutionists, right? And so thinking about that greater good goes a long way. So with that, I'll go ahead and conclude my prepared remarks. Just show you, by the way, the very first cold front coming into Columbus, downtown looking north. The very first cold front this summer that brought wildfire smoke to Ohio. So I thought it was a great time for you to share tonight. But thank you for your attention, and it's been great to meet you.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We have about 5 minutes if there are questions for Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, right here.
Quick question, that was, who published those documents?
The U.S. Resilience Toolkit or the others, the IPCC reports, the former. Yeah, so those are basically from NOAA, so scientists within the NOAA organization. A lot of us, including myself, had a role in thinking about the Midwest and resilience and things like that. But a lot of it was spearheaded by authors at NOAA that reached out into the communities to give examples of resilience, how to build that and adapt, and that's all available. There's a lot of information. Yeah.
I wonder if the meteorologists that give us weather reports, why can't they include some of these solutions and ethics and statistics that I would care who doesn't?
Yeah, that's an interesting question and actually a really timely question. And you may have noticed some meteorologists have continued to do that. Many years ago, the same group, the Center for Climate Change and Communication, found that, man, meteorologists in the community they reach a large audience and they're really influential in their communities. And some meteorologists have done that. Others have chosen not to. Just this past summer in Iowa, we had a meteorologist that left. Why? Because he started doing this. He was brought in from their affiliate to talk about climate change to clientele and was receiving death threats and decided to leave. He quit his job and he left. So one thing I didn't show you is the topic still continues to be polarized, like a lot of topics right now, right, in the United States. And so that certainly, even though it's a personal approach, you can run the risk of having that type of hostility over what scientifically is highly credible. So I would say it's complicated. I think, I'm talking to a lot of meteorologists. Some of them prefer not to. Some have embraced it and have started to do a lot. Yeah.
That's one.
Right.
So I'm curious,
I do engage a lot of farmers, and again, when I say things like others care, guess what? There are a large majority of farmers that care, and are good stewards of their land. There are a few bad actors, and unfortunately there are some large actors that contribute greatly to the program, to the problem. Absolutely, absolutely. But so a couple of things there. One, it's not just an ag issue. I think that's a little bit of a mistake in our communicating the impacts. It's an all of us issue. It's how we treat our lawns, what we do on our maintenance on our house. There's a lot there. Two, no, I understand, like, if we want, specific numbers. The other thing is that, one, it's a wicked problem with a lot of complex levers to it. Two, there's a lot of, if you're taking specifically, let's take phosphorus in Northwest Ohio, there's a lot of legacy phosphorus that's sitting, right, in the land. And I challenge farmers, I say that tomorrow, 5.5 inches of rain is going to fall in your field between 2 and 3 p.m. What are you doing today to keep your soil? They don't want their soil gone. They don't want their nutrients washed off, right? It's not something that most farmers want to see. So when we think about these issues, I think that the research is also still involved in understanding nutrients, water, temperatures, climate change. It's making it that much more important that we're doing this, right? And I would say there's a lot of science that is being communicated and being listened to as they start to do nutrient balance, more nutrient farm management, reducing nitrogen, reducing phosphorus inputs. But there's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of work.
And what's your expectation of how many more decades of
research is going to take until something is actualized, because the research we've been talking about has been going on for, what, well, I say it's been longer, it's been over 150 years. You're our experts. What are we missing?
What else are we missing, right? I mean, some of the things that I mentioned. You know, agriculture in the United States and agricultural production is a highly subsidized venture. People have insurance for losses. I'm not just saying follow the money. What I'm trying to convey here is that there's not a single answer. There's not a single solution. There's also not a single culprit. There's not a single reason why these things are happening, right? And I think that I've even seen progress over the last 7 years, because I do see 60, 70 farming engagements a year where I go out to the counties and talk about these issues. And there are other specialists. Extension now has an ecosystem services specialist, has a water management specialist, 3 farm management specialists, increasing the expertise to deliver that information to our clientele in the farming world. I actually think as an extension, I'm trying to get us to think about even outside of farming, in our communities, in our family and consumer sciences, and in our 4-H, and being able to build some of these things about climate into all of our programming, which I think is important. So, again, I think that there's a lot of facets to this. It's not just an ag issue, it's an all of us issue.
And are you happy with the way the farming side of CFAS is listening to the meteorological side of CFAS? No. Here's what I see across the whole North Central region. They brought me on and hired me as a tenure track to the faculty position as a weather and climate specialist. I think that was a huge leap of faith with the trust of their clientele, right? To allow me to go out 70, 80 times a year and talk about climate change in our rural communities, that's a big amount of trust. And I think that's a sign that climate is, and hopefully that's my goal before I retire in 20 years, incorporate more and more into our program. So I'm actually hopeful and optimistic.
So the next moment on our program is to the presentation of our award winners this year. The partners for the environment, we're very pleased to present these.
Sorry. I think I'm loud, I'm not. So, we're going to move on to the presentation of our award winners for this year. We're very pleased to be offering, to be presenting to our award winners these beautiful wooden vases from an artist located in Beaver Creek. What is his name? McGinnis. Check stuff out at a lot of the artisan fairs that go on throughout the region. They're beautiful, beautiful vases. Okay, so the Partners of the Environment, Partner of the Year Awards celebrate those who work to protect, preserve, and restore the environmental and agricultural resources of the Great Miami River and Little Miami River watersheds. The awards recognize some of our victories and honors those who provide us with leadership and inspiration. I am overjoyed to be introducing this year's honorees to you this evening. We're going to start with our Partner of the Year Award, and in the context of Partners for the Environment, when we say Partner of the Year, we mean organization. And Pat Higgins is here to present an award for Partner of the Year to the BW Greenway Community Land Trust.
Good evening. I'm so pleased to be here tonight to highlight why we nominated BW Greenway Community Land Trust for the Partner Award. We are so excited as a volunteer to BW Greenway to explain to all of you why we made this nomination. BW Greenway Community Land Trust has been in existence for 25 years. The strong group of volunteers continue to work very hard to protect our environmentally sensitive land in Greene and Clark counties, and also works very hard to educate the communities with regard to why they are working so hard to preserve land in our area. Bob Jurek is the founder of BW Greenway. Encourage us to continue our work and also to bring the next generation forward so that they also can work to protect our environmental sensitive land and to increase the educational aspects of preserving land. Tonight, I'm going to be emphasizing their vision and why it's so important. As I mentioned, from the very start, the vision included one, to develop a corridor protecting land between Clark and Greene County. And to date, BW Greenway has currently conserved 25 properties totaling 725 acres of land by using Clean Ohio's grant funds as well as private donations. BW Greenway does not only preserve land, but they work with landowners and park districts to restore the property. There have been many crews of honeysuckle removers out many times during the year to restore very valuable property, as well as building and developing trails and boardwalks so that the public has a better view of what the BW Greenway is protecting. In addition, the second vision is, as I mentioned previously, the importance of educating. And tonight, as a result of a person who has been involved with a very important education program, I feel that BW Greenway is a great recipient for this award. For the last 10 years, BW Greenway and the Fairborn Art Association has sponsored a jury art competition. Artists throughout the Miami Valley are invited to enter the contest to help artists to understand what the jury competition is all about. Each year, BW Greenway selects one of their protected pieces of property and arranges tours so that artists can come out, go for a tour, learn what is valuable about the site, what kind of wildlife lives on the site, and what kind of plants are living. As a city person, I have found these tours so important because quite honestly, without a guide, one, I'd probably get lost, and two, I would not know the importance of one plant over another. So these tours are just so inspiring to the artists because they get to see not only the landscape, but they get to understand and see all the components of the landscape. In 2023, we had 36 artists enter pieces, and we had a total of 66 pieces judged. It was overwhelming how beautiful the pieces were and how appreciated they were by our visitors. At the opening reception, we had 75 people come to the Fairborn Art Association Gallery, and they spent the entire afternoon going from one picture to another, one painting to another, just looking at the scene and how valuable and beautiful it was. Additionally, the gallery was open for 3 additional Sundays in July, and we had people come from all kinds of communities who are aware of the juried art competition and really have just grown to expect every July to visit the Fairborn Art Association Gallery so they can see what the artists can produce. So we just feel that this is a really unique way to educate the community with regard to the beauty that's out there in Greene and Clark counties in our preserved land. Many times people say, well, they can just read about it. But no, when they really create a piece of artwork and the public can enjoy it, it's It's a great educational tool. Our founder for the art competition, I can't miss not mentioning, is Bob Coates. Bob is a nationally known artist in Fairborn and art professor at Sinclair Community College. And it was his idea to create this contest, and has always been a supporter throughout the years to make sure we continue to grow. And we just feel that this is a real reason to have BW Greenway nominated and awarded tonight. And I greatly appreciate that opportunity. Sarah is our vice president. BW Greenway Community Land Trust. Here to accept the award.
Individual of the Year Award. This is an award that honors individual volunteers or contributors to environmental causes who have had a particularly great and very productive and engaging year and a half. And Kate Bochner from the Dayton Foundation is here to introduce Gayle Covington Fowler.
Well, it's an absolute privilege for me to introduce Gayle Fowler as the recipient of the Individual of the Year Award. I got to know her through our mutual participation in the Miami Valley Environmental Justice Academy in 2021 and 2022. And I remember was the time of COVID and remote learning. So much of this was done on Zoom until we were actually able to meet in person. But throughout that program and since our graduation, Gayle has been a thoughtful and selfless leader for the alumni of that program, both at the local level and in Valley, and she also serves as the VP of the National Environmental Justice Association. So she's really quickly adapted this document. Gayle inspires me regularly to keep moving in this work, and she knows that very regularly. She's strategic in her approach to getting people at the same rate to learn from each other and always to take action. I want to highlight the fact that Doug Horvath actually submitted a nomination for this award, and he sincerely wishes he could be here, but he is taking care of a medical issue. So I want to just share a couple things that he said about her in the letter, because it was very, very well written. He said, Gayle has been a long-term community activist and minister with a big heart who easily connects with others, which if we see her table totally filled with her loved ones and friends tonight, you can see that that's true. He first met her through the Family Engagement Collaborative, where she regularly gives voice to members of the community who are hurting and not in a position to voice their pain. He noted that Gayle doesn't work alone, which I've seen time and time again, and she brings a sense of wonder and awe to her own growing experiences with nature. She's passionate that the health of our community and the health of our environment go hand in hand, which I absolutely support and agree with. So I just want to share a couple of Gayle's wonderful accomplishments and successes. This is not going to be the whole list because it's 18 pages long. But she often regularly brings the US EPA and their resources to our region around environmental justice work, which is a wonderful asset to all of us. She coordinates learning sessions on topics such as disparities in asthma, talking about how children in different zip codes have different asthma rates. She talks about protecting children and families from lead and environmental toxins. She talks about mold in our communities. She does lead trainings, and she does tours of community sites that are important. She hosted a book discussion online nationally with the author Majora Carter for her book Reclaiming Your Community, and she continues to work with a long list of writers, many of whom are in this room. So even in light of all her credentials and her incredible impact, I think the greatest thing about Gayle and the greatest thing that she brings to this work is her presence and her authenticity. To know Gayle is an honor, and to get to work with you, Gayle, as your friend and co-conspirator is a joy. Congratulations, Gayle. I think you can now officially call yourself an environmental expert, even though you never saw yourself in that light before, but you're getting an award from Partners for the Environment tonight, so I think you have to accept it.
Doug is doing what Doug should be doing right now. That's being a father and a husband, and he's with his family. And that's one of the things that just so admire about him. He's just a wonderful, great co-conspirator, as Kate has just mentioned for us. So I've known Doug for many years and just incredibly grateful for this honor. I want to give acknowledgments first to my husband. He is not able to join us, he's not here, but he's in the heavens, giving a great smile and a thumbs up, way to go, and I really appreciate it because he was the impetus for this work. God just led me on a path of grief and overcoming lots of pain and saying, yeah, I have a purpose for you. And that purpose is going to not be in vain because it's also going to honor your life supporters, and as we call each other, my husband. So it's just great to do this work under the name of Gayle, just committed to care. I also, with Doug, I've known him for years. We've done this work together in the community to serve families and the community. And right now, I'm just grateful for the opportunity of the things I've learned from him as I grow in this work with environmental justice. Anybody who knows him knows he has this incredible passion for nature, and it's always been a joy to just share, talk, and do activities with him. He has been a partner and colleague that I will just be eternally grateful for the relationship we developed. I want to also share gratitude for those who traveled here to Yellow Springs this evening to support me. Yay, thank you. I really appreciate it, and my heart swells with gratitude. Gratitude makes sense of our past, and it also brings peace for today, and it creates a vision for tomorrow. So I'm also incredibly grateful for this honor from the Partners for Environment. Although I want to say thank you for honoring my service, I'm really going to say for our service, because it really took a team. And as I look at this room, and particularly this quadrant, and just from, my pastor always taught me, don't say names, it'll get you in trouble. Because you'll leave somebody out. So I'm just so grateful for so many people who just came alongside, supported, encouraged, prayed, took care of craziness to just help us get through this past year. It's been a journey, but been an incredibly fun and rewarding journey, and also a blessing for so many others. So I'm thankful for that. I also thought of quote, Martin King says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. I do this work to serve the least because it is the commandment and my calling. May we seek to join together, collaborate, and create a collective voice across this community and across this country to really continue to eliminate the disparities that many in our communities are experiencing, create justice where there's health inequities, and most importantly, may we seek equity for all families, children, and communities, and may they have an opportunity to live in environmentally safe conditions that contribute to their health and not decrease their health. this work. And may you remember, I just want us to come together. We cannot do this in a silo. I so appreciate all of you, and thank you, Partners for Life, for this honor.
So this year we are presenting 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, celebrating 3 tremendous careers contributing to our region's environment. First, Matt Curie from Able, who's here to present and accept the award for Ellis Jacobs.
And Able is an office, so we're lawyers, so we are lawyers. So yeah, I don't know how you have to, you're almost, let's see here. They determine as a spirit of neighborhood campaigns to protect regional, central, air, and local resources, having local communities and public health. He has unprecedented work as navigating local community for the West Dayton Partners Coalition with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and Maintaining the Coalition of Consumer Hospital. This work covers the health facility for West Dayton. He also did a good job at advocating for transportation equity with the Creek. He successfully filed his Title VI complaint with the Department of Transportation, and he found that the value of the Title VI so much that. And he had good help there. Work has impacted lives and clients in Bronx side and achieving significant results. So he was involved in a lot of PTO litigation, litigation, and so about the fuel pump, he's preparing that work. Skilled and passionate litigator, visionary, and influential advocate of our local communities for law firm. Successfully for federal agencies and standards in a variety of our issues, strengthening law enforcement and reinforcing foreign toxic criminal regulations. So he was very involved with the Next issue in Judgment Township by Gayle. I mean, we're going to do one with the gas, and we'll be there, and the gas is out. We filed a lawsuit against the company that Perfect to make sure that's set up properly. Visionary, that's very visionary too, because he established a fund that students say were the first to get respected and spread with the official leader of the community, and he has certain boards and the President of House in Action. And he's been on the Universal Services Division Board of Records. He's also been on the Neighbor Advisory. So Ellis, he's actually known he's in Germany with his family. Fortunately for everyone, so I got to see him. But yeah, so let's go for Ellis.
We have Heather Ritter here to present to Jean Ryan and Sally Keys Lifetime Achievement Awards. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So I have the privilege of telling you all an amazing story about two women and their farm tonight. So in the early 1970s, two school teachers from St. Agnes School noticed the only outdoor time their students were receiving involved blacktop surfaces. They asked their school if they could start taking these students to local parks for small field trips. As they took the kids to local parks, they were astounded at the lack of experience these children had with the outdoors. At the parks, they thought they were in a jungle or in a forest, because they had never experienced so many trees growing in one place together. The children were kind of fearful at first, but then they got excited about the bugs and the bird nests and cooking over an open fire. Again, this was the 70s. So when they returned to the classroom, they were filled with excitement and enthusiasm and a new self-confidence. Jean Ryan and Sally Keys were these two teachers, and these students were the inspiration for Learning Tree Farm. Jean and Sally were also excited about the hands-on learning and the newfound sense of self-confidence and wonder it inspired in their students. They realized that they needed to help the students make connections in their natural world and show them where their food comes from and how things grow. The teachers recognized the difference that different people have in learning with different ways, and some need that hands-on learning experience. And they wanted to provide something that children would never forget. Jean and Sally wanted to provide that outdoor setting where teachers could actually bring their students to experience an outdoor classroom. As they explored available locations, it became clear that a traditional farm with fields, woods, gardens, and barns would be the most available and appropriate setting for their new experiment. They began looking at farms, but they had no money at the time. So a group of friends and family members of Jean and Sally's formed a partnership called Land Group 5, and they purchased a 55-acre farm as a long-term real estate investment, which they later donated back. The farm would then be used as a classroom without walls with the mission to facilitate hands-on learning in a traditional farm setting. With volunteer efforts, improvements were made around the property, and the teachers moved into the farmhouse in June of 1973 and began hosting field trip groups immediately. During the first year, Learning Tree Farm served approximately 200 children from local schools. As time went on, schools throughout the Miami Valley discovered the farm and began bringing classes from more than 8 surrounding counties for an opportunity to experience our unique programming. As attendance grew, more staff was needed, and were brought on board, and Jean and Sally were able to step away from their day-to-day duties on the farm. Their guidance and knowledge have been the cornerstone for all of our current programming. Now, in 2023, our field trips are at capacity, as we provide field trips for over 9,500 children per year. 200 kids to 9,500. We welcome drop-in visitors, host community educational programming events, summer camp outreach, and so much more, to a total of now 17,000 visitors last year just to Learning Tree Farm. But none of this would have been possible were it not for the seeds that were planted by Jean and Sally in 1973. Currently, while Jean and Sally are no longer in an official leadership role, they are the first call that we make for advice. They are our sounding board when we have any question about the reason behind what we do. and they are always available when called upon to help. Their enthusiastic spirit for giving children the gift of nature and hands-on experiences has been a driving force for our team and our board members, who continue to carry on the mission that they set forth 50 years ago. And their legacy continues to shine through every child who picks up a chicken, lifts up a rock, and tastes their first fresh vegetable. I am so honored tonight to be able to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Jean, Ryan, and Sally Keys. Congratulations again. Let's give them another round of applause. All of these people have built all of these amazing teams, and they recruit people to help them, and they've just built so much powerful things in our community, and I'm just constantly impressed when I hear these stories. So thank you for coming tonight, all of you, to honor them. Just a few last thank yous and then we'll get you on your way home. Special thanks to 4 students who came, college students who came tonight to help us. We recruited Andrew and not the Andrew. Clay. They told me 2 Andrews were coming and then a Clay came. Andrew and Clay from the University of Dayton. Let's give them a round of applause. Came to help us. Special awards, again, were from a local artist. Thanks to Michelle Burns for spying him one day and turning us on to awards that are, nature themed, but local artists. We love to, get that part of our awards. Oh, hey, the plants. Everybody should turn over their program. Turn over your program. Do you have a pumpkin sticker on your program? You get to take a plant home. And we got the kale back. The year that we gave the kale away was very popular, so Eric got kale again. Thank you again to our sponsors. I do. Thank you again to our sponsors for making this night extra special for us so we can participate. Thank you to Dr. Wilson to come share your wisdom and to spar with my husband, who's very passionate about nutrient pollution. But Gayle said it. She said you have to speak up about your passion. So everyone should continue to do that. Thanks to the steering committee for organizing this amazing party. And be careful going home, and we'll see you in a year. Oh, don't forget to take the survey and tell us about this
this party extra special next year. Good night.